Before you read another self-help book, before you buy another productivity course, consider this. The men who built the ancient world, the conquerors, the lawgivers, the poets, none of them had access to any of that. What they had was something older. They had heroes, not heroes in the shallow modern sense, not role models or influencers. They had men they studied the way a sculptor studies bone structure, obsessively, reverently, and with a clear purpose. They were trying to become something, and the figure they fixed their eyes on determined exactly what that something would be. Napoleon, in the cold campaigns of northern Italy, kept a worn copy of Plutarch in his saddlebag. Caesar, standing at a statue of Alexander in a Spanish temple, reportedly wept. Not from sadness, but from the ache of a man who felt he was running out of time to match a standard. Alexander himself, from boyhood, slept with a copy of the Iliad annotated by Aristotle, convinced he was the next Achilles. Each man was reaching backward through time toward a figure greater than himself, and each man, in doing so, reached further than he otherwise would have. That is not coincidence, that is a method. In 1840, a Scottish historian named Thomas Carlyle gave a series of lectures that shook the intellectual world. He published them as On Heroes, Hero Worship, and the Heroic in History. His central claim was blunt. History is not made by forces or movements or economic conditions. It is made by extraordinary individuals, men of rare genius, decisive will, and a kind of fire that sets everything around them alight. He called this the great man theory of history, and the academic establishment has spent nearly 2 centuries trying to bury it. Carlyle argued that these figures, what he called heroes, were not merely products of their age. They were the decisive weight that tipped the age one way or another. History provided the conditions. The hero provided the spark. And without that spark, the kindling just sits there. He was asking a question that almost no one asks anymore. Not just what happened, but who made it happen, and what was it about them that made them capable of it. The 6 types of hero Carlyle identified covered every domain of human life. There is the divine hero, like Odin, a god that men created in the image of what a man could become. The prophet, like Muhammad, a figure who rewires an entire civilization's sense of the sacred. The poet, like Dante or Shakespeare, who gives a people their language for the deepest things. The priest, like Luther, who bends institutions to principle. The man of letters, like Rousseau, who plants the seeds of political revolutions with nothing but ink. And the king, like Cromwell or Napoleon, who seizes the moment and reshapes nations by sheer force of character. One for every calling, one for every form of ambition. Long before Carlyle, Plutarch understood this instinctively. Writing in the 2nd century, Plutarch produced what may be the most practically useful book ever written. Parallel lives. He paired great Greeks with great Romans, Alexander alongside Caesar, Demosthenes alongside Cicero. Not to write dry biography, but to extract the pattern of greatness itself. To show his readers, here is a man, here is what he did, here is what it cost him, here is what you might take from it. Plutarch was not writing history for historians, he was writing it as a manual for living. Suetonius did the same with the 12 Caesars. Machiavelli, centuries later, made the method explicit in The Prince when he wrote that a ruler must read accounts of great men, must study their victories and their failures with the same care an athlete studies film, not for nostalgia, but for usable knowledge. Machiavelli put it simply, most men imitate, but few imitate anyone worth imitating. Aim at a figure of genuine greatness, he said, and even falling short of that mark puts you higher than you would have been chasing something smaller. These were not armchair observers, they were men trying to produce results in the real world, and they all arrived at the same method. Fix your gaze on the greatest figure you can find. Study them the way a craftsman studies a master's work, not to copy blindly, but to absorb the underlying logic of excellence. You probably were not taught this way, almost no one is anymore. The dominant school of historical thought today runs in the opposite direction. It looks not upward at exceptional individuals, but outward at structures, systems, classes, the forces that, in this view, make individuals largely interchangeable. A great leader in this telling is mostly a convenient symbol for a movement that would have happened anyway. Remove one figure and another steps in. The tide rises regardless. There is something in this. No man acts outside of his time. Caesar could not have conquered a world that did not yet exist to be conquered. But the structural view tends to produce a flattened picture of the past, one in which there is no one to admire, no life worth studying for its own qualities, and no lesson that applies to you personally. You are too small to matter. The systems are too large to challenge. The right response to history, in this view, is analysis, not inspiration. That is a costly swap, and you feel the cost whenever you try to find a figure in the history you were taught who you actually want to become. So what does it actually look like to study great men the way Napoleon did? It is not the same as reading a biography for entertainment. It requires a different posture, closer to the way a medical student reads a case study or a lawyer reads a landmark judgment. You are not a spectator. You are trying to extract something transferable. Start with a figure whose domain overlaps with your own ambitions. If you care about strategy, read about Caesar's campaigns in Gaul, not just the victories, but the moments he was nearly broken, and how he recalibrated. If you care about persuasion, read Cicero, not the political summaries, but the actual speeches, to feel the rhythm of a mind that could move a crowd with nothing but language. If you care about building something that outlasts you, read Marcus Aurelius, not for the philosophy in the abstract, but for what it meant to hold beliefs that cost you something to keep. The question to bring to every life you study is not simply, what did they achieve? It is, what did they understand about the world that most people around them could not see? And what would I need to become in order to see it too? The hero serves as a mirror, but a strange one. It shows you not what you are, but what you could be, if you were willing to take seriously the qualities you most admire. Carlyle put it plainly, we cannot look, however imperfectly, upon a great man without gaining something by him. Your heroes shape you whether you choose them deliberately or not. The question is only whether you choose them well. History, studied this way, is not an academic subject. It is a form of self-construction. Every life you study seriously adds something to the structure of who you are, a new standard to measure yourself against, a new proof that certain kinds of excellence are actually possible. The men who built civilization did not do it by looking at the average of what was around them. They looked at the highest thing they could find, they measured themselves against it, and they moved. If this way of thinking about history is new to you, start with Plutarch. Pick one life, Caesar, Alcibiades, Cicero, and read it with a pencil. Ask what you would do in his position. Let the gap between your answer and his answer teach you something. The archive of great lives is the longest education available to any human being. It has been there for thousands of years. Most people walk past it every day. You do